In this video, we are going to combine point turns, like in a drive a square, and with a touch sensor. To accomplish this, come over here to the EV3 program. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab a loop. Drop that in place. And this can run infinite number of times. You can set it up for a count where it runs a certain finite number of times. I think to keep this thing from getting too far out of hand, I probably will set it up so it only runs a few times. But it could run infinity, especially if you're going to put it on the floor and run a wide open space. Let's set it up to run 4 times. Now, inside that loop, what we want to do is we're going to drive forward. And rather than have this run for a fixed number of rotations or degrees or any of that, we simply want to turn the motor on. We're not going to do any counting. We're not going to do any monitoring or accepting any feedback. We're going to turn the motors on at this instruction and immediately go to the next instruction. What's that next instruction going to be? Well, we want it to drive forward and wait until the button gets pressed. So we're going to add a wait instruction. Only we're not going to wait for the passage of time. We're going to choose the touch sensor. So we're going to wait on the touch sensor to go to a certain state. So we'll compare against an absolute state, and state 1 is when the button's pressed. And that's exactly what we want to happen. So we're going to turn the motors on, and then we're going to wait for the button to be pressed. Once the button is pressed, then it can go to the next instruction. It will hang here at the second instruction while nothing's happening. So if the button does get pressed in, what we're going to do is we're going to drag another motor instruction up. And let's reverse direction with this. So take the power, instead of a positive 50, let's do a negative 20. And the same thing for this one. Let's set this up for a power level of 20 so it's not going so fast. I have a limited amount of tabletop space, and I don't want the robot to get away from me. So here we're going to set the speed up for positive 20 so that we'll drive forward. If you put in a negative 20, it will drive backwards and want to run off the edge of the table. And when you run the motors more slowly, you do get better control out of them. So we're going to drive forward, wait for the button to be pressed, and then we're going to back up 1 full rotation. Sure, seems okay. And then we want to change directions. And for that, I'm going to use this motor instruction. And I'm going to set one motor up for a power level of negative 20 and set the other motor up for a power level of positive 20. That's going to spin the 2 motors against each other in opposite directions and do what's called a point turn. And for the size tires that I've got on here, I want to do roughly a half of a rotation or 80 degrees. And if I set this up for 80 degrees, I could have some more fineness in the control compared to specifying a decimal number for rotations. But in any event, this program now is going to turn the motors on, and then it's just going to drive forward until the button gets pressed in. Once the button gets pressed in, then it's going to back up, it's going to perform a point turn, and then it gets to the end of this instruction. It's going to come back around and repeat from the beginning again. Now in this instance, it's only going to do that 4 times. But we could set this up for a different number, or we could set this up to be dependent on another input sensor, or we could simply let it run an infinite number of times. If I had a large open space and I could set this on the floor and just let it go, I would be inclined to set this for an infinity number of times. So with that program completed, let's go ahead and download this wirelessly with the Bluetooth connection and have this execute. So you can see it performed this operation 4 times and then it stopped. So that is combining the touch sensor and the point turn and the loop together from the previous projects of Drive a Square and the push button sensor into one little slightly more sophisticated program.